Hello and welcome to Canguro English. Today I am going to be talking about myths about learning languages. Okay, here we go. The first thing is people who say that you can learn English in a specific amount of time. For example, learn English in 90 days, or learn English in 2 weeks or 24 hours. Well, the truth is that most of these claims about learning English in a specific amount of time are wrong. Why? Well, number one, because it takes a very long time, much longer than these people claim, to learn a language. And number two, you never stop learning. I am a native English speaker. I teach English. I work with English every day, and I am still learning things about English language. And also, what's the rush? The learning process is the most fun part of learning a language, really. And that's why you need to find a good teacher who can motivate you, who can make the classes fun so that the learning process is enjoyable. And then you don't want it to end. You look forward to coming to class. So now some facts. The Foreign Services Institute, which is part of the US Department of State, compiled a list of how long it took, on average, their learners to learn specific languages. So the important thing to remember is that a language will take longer to learn if it is very different from your native language. So, for example, an English person learning Spanish will be faster than an English person learning Japanese, for example. And vice versa. A Japanese person learning English will have more difficulty than a Japanese person learning Chinese, for example. So the Foreign Service Institute's level was based on this criteria. So, able to speak the language and participate effectively in most formal and informal conversations, but with noticeable imperfections. Able to read within a normal range of speed and complete comprehension. And in face-to-face conversation with natives, the natives can speak at a normal rate of speech. When writing, you have a control of structure, spelling, and general vocabulary. Control of grammar is good with only sporadic errors. And your pronunciation may be obviously foreign. So, certainly not what you would call native level, above good, really good conversational language. Basically, you sound like Borat. So, what did they discover? Category 1 language, which is a language which is very similar to your own, would take approximately 600 hours of study. And a Category 3 language, which is very different from your own, would take 2,200 hours of study. And this is studying in small groups of no more than 6, with 25 hours in the classroom every week and 3 to 4 hours per day of studying at home. Most learners of a language are not able to, nor have the motivation to dedicate this amount of time to learning a language. So you can imagine 600 hours spread across, let's say, 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week. It's a very long time, and certainly not the 3 months or 2 weeks or the other claims that people make. But don't let that discourage you. Remember, communication and not perfection. It is fun to learn a language, although realistically you will need to spend a long time to reach a high level. You can, in a short time, you can reach a level where you can be comfortable, you can go on holidays. That's the important thing. Another thing people say the best way to learn a language is this method. Well, clearly everybody learns differently. Some people like to learn with repetition. Other people like to jump from one thing to another. You know what works best for you, so you learn in that way and don't listen to anybody who tries to tell you otherwise. Another thing that people say is they say, I'm no good at languages. Well, let me tell you a little story. Misha Elman, a violinist, was leaving Carnegie Hall with his wife. Carnegie Hall is a very famous classical music venue in America. And there were some tourists outside the hall. And the tourists asked the violinist, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And he turned to them and said, practice. Practice is the number one key to learning a language, obviously. So is there such a thing as a language gene? Well, some genes such as CNTNAP2 or FOXP2 can affect your ability to learn a language, but this would also affect your ability to learn your native language. So if you speak your native language well, then you probably have no malfunction. And so far, no gene has been discovered that puts people at an advantage when learning language. So why do some people seem to learn languages better than others? Well, the key factor is motivation. A number of studies conducted by R.C. Gardner and his colleagues have found that motivation is one of the key factors in the success of learning a new language. Gardner and his colleagues divided motivation into two categories: integrative and instrumental motivation. Integrative motivation means that you want to learn a language to integrate either with a new country, with your workmates, or maybe a club you're going to. And instrumental motivation is when you want to learn a language to achieve an objective, maybe a promotion at work, a certificate. They found that people who have a strong integrative motivation are the people who are really successful at learning languages. So motivation is definitely a key factor. How can you get motivated? Find a good teacher. Another factor that people don't often talk about is your personal ability to discriminate between different sounds. In 2008, the Cognitive Neuroscience Research Group in Barcelona found a strong correlation between people who had a good personal ability to discriminate between different sounds and their success in learning a new language. So if you were exposed to other languages when you were a small baby, or you just have a good ear, maybe you play music, then yes, it's possible that you have a slight advantage. The final factor, which is very important, which I'm going to talk about, is mindset. Basically, if you think that you can't learn a language, then you won't learn a language. So I'm going to read two statements, and I'm going to ask you whether you agree with them or not. So the first one is, your ability to learn English is bad, and there is nothing you can do about it. The second one is, you can study English, but you can't really change your ability to learn English. Did you agree with both of those statements? If you did, then you have what's called the fixed growth mindset. Those statements were invented by Carol Dweck, professor of psychology at Stanford University. And she discovered that people who have a fixed growth mindset have a 20% reduction in their ability to learn new things. And people who have an open mindset, people who have a growth mindset, have a 30% increased ability to learn. But the important thing is that you can change your mindset. If you realize that you can learn a language, if you really believe it, then you will have much greater success. So I'm here to tell you, you can do it. You can do it. Another thing people say is that one day it just clicked. Well, this is ridiculous. I mean, obviously the entire grammatical system, vocabulary doesn't just click. It takes years of practice. I'm sorry. Another thing is people say that they learnt English from watching television. Clearly, nobody in the history of the world has ever learnt a language from watching television. People in some countries, such as the Northern European countries, who have a small output of cultural material in their own language, like movies and books, they have a lot of input in English. They watch English films, they read English books, they might read English instruction manuals. So when they say that they learn English from watching television, what they don't realize is that they are constantly using, absorbing, understanding English every day. Television is really good for practicing your listening to the learning the rhythms of a new language, but I'm sorry to tell you, you cannot learn English from watching television. Another thing people say is that I am too old to learn a language. Well, I can tell you that it is a little bit true. The thing is, by the age of 12 months, a baby has lost its ability to distinguish between certain sounds in a language. So if you are more than 12 months old, which you probably are, then your ability has already been damaged by this. So let's say, don't worry about it. The second thing that people talk about is called the critical period hypothesis, where people say that after a certain age, your ability to learn a language dives like this. Well, this is not actually true. A comprehensive study by Johnson and Newport about the critical period hypothesis discovered that after the ages of about 7 or so, there is a more linear decline in your ability to learn a new language, but it's not severe like this. Let me read a little bit from their conclusion. For adult learners, age does not continue to be a predictor of performance. Thus, any proposed mechanism accounting for adult performance likewise cannot be correlated with age. Moreover, while early learners are uniformly successful in acquiring their language to a high degree of proficiency, later learners show much greater individual variation. In general, age is not an indicator of your ability to learn a language. And in general, children learn a language very well, and adults, it varies a lot, but probably because of other factors such as your environment, motivation, etc. So what could be some of the reasons why it would be more difficult? A group of scientists from the University of Maryland used computer modeling to see how our memory affects our language learning. Let me read a little bit from the abstract. So, in the computer modeling part, we show that a decline in learning parallel to what happens with increasing age in second language learners occurs as a function of how connectivity in the neural network is allowed to grow during the learning process. So basically, our ability to memorize things and the type of memory we use changes as we get older. So we have to work a lot harder. Sarah Furman and Avi Kani from the Tel Aviv University found that adults outperform children in learning a second language in some tasks. Let me read from their abstract. Altogether, our findings support the notion of age-dependent maturation in the establishment of declarative, but also of procedural memory in a complex language task, and do not support a simple notion of language skill learning advantage in children. So hopefully that has helped to clear up some myths about learning language. So don't forget, Canguro English is your place to learn English. So subscribe to our channel and we'll see you in class.